course. Hang on.
Before we start, I just wanted to invite Violeta to stay with us because we will speak about calendars and seasonal timing and your Central European and Slavic knowledge about calendars would also be.
I'm staying till the end, so don't worry.
Yeah, perfect. Valerie, please. Sorry.
Morning to everybody. My gosh, we have such a range. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. It's wonderful to be here this morning on this lovely morning, and we have a wonderful range of people joining us. So today we will be looking at the power of stories about seasonal timing, which is obviously a beautiful thing around transition and change. So the invitation really is for us to listen deeply to the voices of the cities and the people who are bringing their stories forward, and places to discover how different cultures across the world connect with soul and the sacred spirit of the places across time. As I said, the theme of the session will be the ancient calendars, and we have representation right across the globe. So the calendars of those places across the world and how they linked and connected their people to the land and to the skies. These ancient calendars were sophisticated systems of timekeeping, which is linked to the rhythms of the natural world. We will hear the ancient stories and of the rituals and festivals which were used and are still used as a mechanism of celebration and to relay information to its people, enabling them to make sense of and to flow in unison with the natural world, which is what we all desire. So we'll explore together with the amazing panel of guests, the ancient Chinese, Celtic, Maori, South African, Eastern European, Slavic calendars, and in doing so uncover the wisdom of our ancestors. So what I might do is just introduce very briefly each of the panel, and thank you all for being here. I know we have people up very, very early and very, very late. So just introducing each briefly, and then before each person comes in with their stories and sharing, I'll provide maybe a more in-depth background. So my co-host today, Dave Smith from New Zealand, technologist, systemic innovation leader, entrepreneur and storyteller, a self-described telefusionist. We then have Omar Belarek from Morocco, I hope I pronounced that correct, Omar, who's a storyteller from Marrakesh. Storyteller, cultural connection and community. And he's actively involved in the World Storytelling Cafe. Maria Gillen, or Banfassa from Ireland, who has brought some wonderful people to the table with us here today. So we're delighted to the expanding group. So Maria Gillen from Cork, an award-winning Irish storyteller, drama therapist, and founder of Story by Seeds. Obviously, we have Marina Tomchenko here with us, and Violeta. And Jim Brule is joining us from New York. Jim Brule is a transformational storyteller, death doula, teacher, and mentor, drawing on a unique background spanning clinical psychology and AI. So what I was thinking, right, just to start us, I just would like to read a little poem from John O'Donoghue, just to bring us in gently to this morning. And then as the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, I thought we might honour that natural rhythm here this morning. And we will hear from each of the guests in that similar flow in relation to the stories they bring. So before that, we'll just start with a small poem by John O'Donoghue. As spring rain softens the earth with surprise, may your winter places be kissed by light. As the ocean dreams to the joy of dance, may the grace of change bring you elegance. As day anchors a tree in light and wind, may your outer life grow from peace within. And as twilight fills night with bright horizons, may beauty await you at home beyond. So with that, I'd love to introduce Jim Brule from New York, but he will be sharing with us stories from the Chinese solar and lunar calendar. So Jim, welcome. Are you there?
I am here. Thank you.
Lovely to see you, Jim.
Thank you. And it's brulee, just so you know, French. I have two pieces. I have the story and also the calendar information. Which would you prefer me to start with?
What about the calendar? Why don't we
Okay.
start with the calendar, Jim? Yeah.
So I'm a student of many things, but including that is our calendars from indigenous and older peoples. And most older cultures have some kind of what's called lunisolar calendar, which means that they take the months into consideration, determined almost always, but not always, by a new moon. And then they have to decide how to reconcile that with the seasons of the solar calendar, the solar year. And I just find it intriguing to see how they've done that and why they've made the choices they make. So I'll start with the Haudenosaunee, which is the indigenous people where I live. And they have a 13-month calendar, which creates a year that's longer than the solar year. And in order to reconcile that, because they want their calendar months to stay in sync with the seasons, they have an elder who will decide when to drop a month so that the months of the season coincide with the actual season. So it's very, very based on observing what's going on in the natural world and adjusting the formal time to meet that natural earth-based season. It's the only one I know of that does that, although several of the North American indigenous groups do that. Another is the Hebrew calendar, which, like most other lunisolar calendars, has 12 months, and they add a month at a certain frequency in order to keep the holidays in sync again with the seasons. In the Hebrew calendar, and as most of these do, that's 7 leap months in a cycle of 19 years. So that's a kind of complicated thing to manage. The Hebrew calendar does that by always adding a month every 2 or 3 years to the same month just before spring. So the calendar seems to be oriented around the spring festivals and the spring energies of the world. Another one that uses a very similar approach is the Hindi calendar, or one of the many Hindu calendars, because in fact, the northern Hindu calendar takes the full moon as the beginning of the month, whereas the other takes the new moon. But they again have those 7 leaps in 19 years. But which month gets changed depends on not the season, but the stars. So they look up to the stars and say, are we matching the star patterns that we want to match? And that's how the Hindu calendar gets adjusted. Another is the Chinese calendar, which again has the same challenge of 9 leap years in a 17-year cycle, but they move it by astrological sign. So that's what matters the most. And it means that any month can be doubled, according to a very complicated astrological calendar that I can't pretend to understand. And the last one I'll mention is the Muslim calendar, which is unique because it is not a lunisolar calendar, it's a lunar calendar. And so there are only 12 months, and that means every year, the calendar shifts by 10 or 11 days. And that means that a holiday, such as we've just completed Ramadan, moves around the year. Sometimes it's a very short day when it's in the winter. Sometimes it's a very long day, but they're not tied to an earth event. They're tied to spiritual events. So they say what matters most is the spirit and the divine order of things. So we have several different ways that these calendars, even though they seem at the outside perhaps very similar, orient themselves to what's important and what cycles they're following, whether they're divine or astrological or earth-based. And that tells us a lot about the cultures that give rise to these calendars. So I just thought that was interesting to share.
And it's funny. I'm wearing my sun, moon, and stars pendant this morning, which is kind of very relevant, isn't it? Yeah, yeah, they're beautiful. Yeah, and you can imagine the difficulties then with aligning kind of day-to-day life with all those adjustments. That's not an easy thing.
And in some calendars, like the Hebrew calendar, is calculated many, hundreds of years in advance. So one looks it up. When you go to the Haudenosaunee or the Chinese calendar, it's adjusted, the Muslim calendar, it's adjusted by observation. And so you don't really know when the month comes until somebody goes out and says, ooh, I see enough of the moon to call it a new month, or I've observed the season. So yes, there's not so much an unpredictability as a surrender to the flow of what the natural world has provided.
Yeah. Beautiful, that's lovely. Great, would you like to maybe share your
Sure.
story? That would be lovely, Jim, thank you.
Sure. So we're not coming up on this particular holiday, but this is a story about a Chinese holiday that will take place in a little bit. It's a beautiful holiday. And the name of the story is the Weaver Girl and the Cowherd. And this is one of 4 stories that China says, if you want to understand our culture, you have to know these 4 stories. So you'll be a quarter of the way there by the time we're through. Back in a long time ago, and Chinese stories take millennia sometimes to transpire, it was understood that there were beings who lived above in the heavens. They weren't gods and goddesses, but they were very, very long-lived, and they had amazing powers, and there were humans. And the heavenly beings were not supposed to have romantic relationships. They were supposed to live more elevated lives, if you will, than that. But of course, it happened that 2 of them fell in love. And these heavenly beings were only visible to us humans as stars. So one was Altair and one was Vega. And Altair was the girl, the woman, and Vega was the male. And they fell in love and they began a relationship, a romantic relationship. Well, Altair's mother was the queen of the heavens, and she was furious that her daughter would engage in such base kinds of activity. And in her fury, she sent Vega, the man, down to earth as a human, as a cowherd, as a mortal. And she consigned her daughter, who got, of course, a little better treatment, to weave clouds together. And so her days were spent weaving the edges of clouds together in such great talent and skill that one could never tell where the edges were, how they had been woven together. And they lived this way for quite a while. In fact, millennia, we don't know how long it was, but they lived that way for quite a while. Now, the cowherd, who appeared on earth and had lost all memory of his heavenly self, lived a very simple, poor life. He herded cows, and he had one ox that had befriended him somehow, and the ox would speak to him and give him advice and tell him what to do. And the cowherd had learned to follow the oxen's advice. Well, one day, the Weaver girl was hanging out with her girlfriends, and they said, we've found this wonderful lake down on the earth, And it's a wonderful temperature. It's beautiful blue sky above it. We should all go for a bath down there. And so they asked the permission of the queen of the heavens, and she gave her permission because she knew her daughter was a little bored. And they descended upon the lake, dressed in shimmering gowns. And when they reached the lake, it was so beautiful that they shed all their clothes and went for a bath in the lake. Well, the cowherd's ox said, "Hey, today's the day. You should go over to the lake, and you should steal the cloak of this one color, the blue one, and hide it. Because when the star women come out of the lake, she won't find her cloak, and I think you're going to like her." And it turns out that the ox knew that this was the couple that had been separated by her mother. And so he went, not knowing this, and grabbed a cloak and splashed around, and the other women saw him and screamed and put their cloaks on and flew up into the heavens. Now, but the weaver girl looked at the ox herd and recognized him and realized that she was back with her love. And so she agreed to stay, she agreed to marry him, and once they were married, he remembered who he was. Now, they had a family, they raised 2 children, and you would think that that was kind of the end of their story. But of course, we've got another whole world up there that's operating on a different time frame. And the Queen Mother looks down and sees, my God, now my daughter has become a human. This is terrible. And so she sent her agents down to bring her daughter back up. And the ox said to the cowherd, "Quickly, I will give you my hide. Make a cloak out of it, and get 2 baskets for your children, and you'll be able to fly up and return to your beloved." And with that, the ox died. And the cowherd skinned his hide, made himself a cloak, grabbed his children, 1 in each bucket, and they went flying up to the heavens. Well, the Queen Mother, who had seen now her daughter return but saw the cowherd coming up, knew she had to take drastic measures. And so she took a needle and she scraped across the sky and made a huge chasm in the sky that you and I would call the Milky Way. And Altair was on one side of the chasm and Vega was on the other. And they couldn't meet. The chasm was so great that no matter how they tried, they couldn't get across it. And their cries were so terrible that after a while, the Queen Mother relented just a little. And she said that on the 7th day of the 7th month, a bridge of magpies could come and straddle that divide across the Milky Way. And the 2 of them could come and meet and embrace for 1 day and 1 day only in the center of that magpie bridge. And that 7th month, the 7th day of the 7th month, is called Qiji. And this is the day in which all lovers in China send each other gifts and notes and remembrances of the love that they have for each other. Thank you.
Oh, how beautiful, Jim. Yeah. I was there by the lake watching very intently what was going on. That was absolutely beautiful. As we go through these different stories, what we'll do then towards the end is maybe, have a look at, similarities, divergences, what is really, I suppose, speaking to us. So we'll have that opportunity to do that later on. So thank you. So Dave, I was thinking so we're thinking about the where as the sun moves. So I was thinking maybe you'd like to come in. Um, how does
Right.
that sound? Is that good for
Yeah,
you?
yeah. Um, a little bit caught out because I think I got this wrong. Because I did my session, which was 3 hours on time and the calendar and wayfinding. And I wasn't and so I just explained where I'm coming from as a storyteller
Yeah.
or kind of a writer, illustrator. But first on the calendar thing, I'm here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And the Maori calendar and Maori New Year is marked by Matariki. Matariki is the rising of Pleiades, and where that's significant, and a little story attached to that is that Pleiades is significant because that is when it's time to plant the sweet potato, and the sweet potato come all the way from South America with the Polynesian voyages, bringing it back to this part of the world. And there was a period where I hosted a group of Māori elders and Olmec shaman on one of our marae. And so during that occasion with Spanish translators, they both shared their stories of Matariki or the Pleiades star system and that time of planting. And what came out through those stories was a common language and a common story that goes back hundreds of years. It's only fairly recently that scientists have actually admitted, well, maybe the Polynesians did actually manage to and fro around the Pacific. And then the genetic scientists recognized that, yeah, there was that connection. So I guess the lesson was that the, some of these stories, although there are different variations, they share a common language with people, and it's so tied to production and harvesting of food. The Maori calendar is tied connected not to the sun, but again to the lunar cycles, because it was the lunar cycles that told them it was time for the tides, harvesting fish, and um, and so there were Maori stories, mythologies about the moon and capturing the sun to slow down the days. And I don't really feel as a Pākehā New Zealander it has been my place to actually tell their stories or write my variations. Um, but in saying that, so my place in story writing, just to give a little bit of a background, came well, initially with the times that I would make up stories every night to read to tell to my children, and they were just off the cuff stories. It was always something that we didn't race through a book. They would sort of come out of somewhere and they would take hours. There was always lots of questions. So it was really fundamental. Later in life, I become an actor and more noted as a character actor. So, developing lots of voices, reading stories to kids become important. And then there was a time when I designed an urban village and that stimulated that encouraged me to write a story called Wobbly Town. And writing a children's book that turned into a series of 5 children's books and talking to other writers and authors, I like the music industry. I discovered that these people are basically captured by the system, captured by publishers. Nobody is making a living. So what I've been doing is creating a mycelium of interwoven thematically linked stories that break the usual sort of trope of Hollywood, good stories for kids connected to the environment. So maybe what I could do is just talk through one of those stories, probably too long to read, So, as an example, although I don't write based on a mythological storyline, but I might use elements of a culture. Like I was asked to write a story for the president of Hawaii, Uncle Bumpy, to share the spirit of aloha and what aloha means, to spread it around the islands. Excuse me, because as we know, stories are a great way of conveying lots of meaning. So, thinking about the story of aloha, it was at the time of the Lahaina fire, and I'd been working in community development, and I thought I want to do something for the people of Lahaina as well. So I wrote a story called Lani and the Lay. Lani and the Lay was about a young girl that lived with her grandfather in a small fale on the beach. Um, we don't, I don't mention what happened to her parents. That's kind of there's a clue. But her grandfather and her obviously have this really strong bond. But what Lani loves to do is to make lei and collect the flowers of the hibiscus. And there's a crow, a native crow that she keeps on giving flowers to, and the crow kind of rejects. As I was thinking through the story, I thought what I would do is I'd narrate it through some of the animals, some of the iconic animals from Hawaii, instead of through a human. And so there's a relationship with the crow. And the crow's got a relationship with Una Una, the hermit crab, because the crow's always trying to convince the hermit crab to climb out of its shell and take on one of these new plastic bottle caps. And then there's, excuse me, I've got a sore throat. Then there's the ostrich and the sea turtle. And what happens in the story is that the grandfather and Lani are walking on the beach, and the grandfather is tuned into the environment, and he sees the hermit crabs moving up off the beach. Then he notices the albatross coming in from the sea. The albatross, as it's coming in from the sea, warns the sea turtle to take cover away from the rocks. And then he sees the crow heading up into the mountains. He knows by all of these things that there's going to be a big storm coming. So they lash down their waka that's on the beach, and they huddle down for the night. And the grandfather tells Lani about Queen Lani Alei, her great-great-grandmother, who she descended from, who was the queen of Hawaii, on Maui, and how she was locked up and imprisoned, and then the colonial growers of the sugarcane sort of took over and blah blah blah. So touch on that sort of history. Then there's a fire, and they see the fire in the hania. In the morning, they're walking along the beach, and Lani looks down at the hermit crabs, and the hermit crabs are swapping from the small shells up to the bigger shells. So the bigger hermit crabs are jumping out of their shells, and the little hermit crabs are jumping into their shells. And this is something I've observed hermit crabs doing in Rarotonga. And that sort of triggers a thought. And Lani turns to her grandfather and says that people shouldn't be too upset about losing their houses, because the real home is Maui, the island. And just like the hermit crabs have to move into a larger shell when they grow out of it, then maybe we grow out of our homes and move into other homes. Then they move into the town that is with the embers and the baobab, not the baobab tree, another tree, I can't remember. And they see the sea turtle coming on shore. The sea turtle's 300 years old and holds the memory of the village that was built over by the colonial missionaries, and digs up the large shell that they use for calling people together, which the grandfather picks up and calls the villagers together, and then they talk about how they're going to reestablish the village. So that story was made up of something that I knew from a Hawaiian friend of mine on Maui, who said that after the fire at Lahania, what happened was that they, through the embers, they found the traces of the original village that was there, including this conch shell that was very important, very sacred. And so the idea of that story was really to use a metaphor to carry something over, but also to give something to the people of Lahania that they could start to sort of work around. I'm not explaining this very well. I think I've been on here for too long, but essentially all my stories are interwoven from different perspectives, from different points of view. And it's something that Douglas Adams, talking to Robbie Stamp, a friend of ours, about Douglas Adams and his vision as a conservationist, instilled in me as far as seeing the world from multiple species points of view, and how we can weave those points of view into children's stories that have some meaning, that are in turn linked to science. Anyway, I'll leave it for later on, but yeah, very badly prepared for
That's
this
all
session,
right.
I'm
It's
afraid.
lovely, Dave. Thank you so much. And actually, I loved the imagery around the shell, and the larger shell, and discovering the larger shell where people could come together, um, to I suppose, yeah, discuss what needs to happen next, and also what can arise from the embers. It's and even looking at the movement from winter into spring, from darkness into light. So
Yeah, I think it was about, really reading the land and being connected to the land and connected to the animals, but also for the people of Lahania, the real threat is the native people have lost their land in Hawaii. And so that whole idea of community coming back together in a traditional way,
yeah.
excuse me, I'll dump.
You need some lemon. You need some lemon and water, Dave. Thank you so much. Thank you. So if it's okay, we will continue on. Maria is going to join us now. So Maria Gillen, an Irish storyteller. She's renowned across Ireland and internationally as a celebrated teller and session host, bringing to life Irish myths, maritime heritage, and community stories that build resilience and connection. So Maria, welcome once again. Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful to be part of this. And there's great interest in our storytelling world, in how the stories can melt boundaries, and and that we can come together like this. So we have two storytellers from the World Storytelling Cafe with us today, but a great interest. So the word is spreading. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
So I suppose kind of Dies Murgwave Agwina Ushla is Misha Moira Shanaki Kirky, just to bring in a couple of focal at the Marthamid a mask shocked in the Gaelga. So we're just at the end of the week of Irish in our country. And I think that's amazing that we're having this now, and that the ancient words are being spoken, because our language is one of the oldest living languages in the world. So I looked at calendars, and as an Irish storyteller, we're always looking at the calendars, because in Ireland, calendars are in our stones. They're in our places like Newgrange and the Hill of the Hostages. It's absolutely amazing. And we're in the middle of our Celtic calendar as well. Right now we're in Imbolug, in the stomach. Imbolc is the new Irish, Imbolug, the ancient Irish, meaning the gestation period. But if I go from the beginning, Samhain is the start. It is the time of the dreaming. We have lots of links there with Maori, Dave. We have lots of links with the Aztec and other ancient cultures, in that it's not really just a dead period, but it's a period of dreaming where we go to ground, that old saying, go to ground, where we relish being round the fire, telling the old stories, singing the old songs. The new stories and the new songs will come in a different season. And then we have imbulk, in the stomach. And if you can imagine somebody who's very highly pregnant, they move much slower. And we are reminded of pace, and we are reminded to stretch slowly into movement, because our limbs, our minds, our hearts have been in Samhain, have been, kind of in sleep for so long, in the dreaming place. Then we have Baal Timna, Bealtana. Bealtana is the mouth of fire, the fire of life, summer, singing, dancing, cavorting, making the new stories, gathering the threads as we walk together and weaving the new stories. And finally, we have Lunasa, the time of harvest. Lunasa by name, Luna by nature. It's the time when we can throw all caution to the wind and celebrate the year that has brought us thus far, before we come once more to Samhain. And of course, we have the quarter days as well. And one of those quarter days has just passed. It was on the 20th, which was World Storytelling Day, and also World Happiness Day. A coincidence? I think not. From that day forward, from the 20th of March forward, the days are a little bit longer than the nights. So I celebrate that with you. The story that I tell today, I've been telling all week long, all over the world, on different online platforms, connecting a lot with America in the run-up to St. Patrick's Day. And it feels like a wound healing. It feels like a light from the past that we can bring forward into the future. And here is the story. It was the year 1848, and the famine was biting down on the shoulder of Era herself. These people, my people, who had been great artists and poets, sports people, these people had been put down. These people had been kept down for 800 years. We had begun to lose our language and the sense of ourselves. And now, adding insult to injury, a story went out across the world that there was a famine in Ireland. But if you ever come here to my country, if you ever sit inside a car looking out the window or walk along our roads, you will see the beautiful green grass, and you will know the lie in that. The Irish people were only allowed to eat potatoes, and for the third year in a row, the hearts of those potatoes were black, while the vegetables, the dairy and the wheat was marched off this island between armed guard to go to feed other countries. So our people had to make tough decisions. They had to make hard decisions. Mr. O'Brien, sitting around his scrubbed wooden table in Ventry in County Kerry, he gathered his family around. I have been saving my pennies, he said. I have been saving my pennies, and I am going to send the healthy branch of our family across the ocean, that you might get work, that you might send across the ocean money to bring the next branch of the family out. Mrs. O'Brien, who had never had a harsh word to say to him in 40 years of marriage, put her knuckles on the table and drew herself up to her full height, her knuckles turning white with temper. She looked at him and she said, "Are you sending my children away from here? What then do we have to live for?" They're my children too, he said, and I want to give them a chance at life, so I will send them from this place. And so they brought in the neighbours to have the American wake. The American wake was the knowledge that you would never again see the faces of these children in this life, even though they were alive and well somewhere else. So they sang the old songs, they told the old stories, they recounted the traditions, they put blessings on the heads of the children. And then those that could gave money, and they rolled it up in a little homemade pouch and sewed it into the vest over the heart of the children, that it would make its way safe across to the other country. The day that they were leaving Kerry, it was as if the sky herself grieved, for the rain was never known to be heavier. They slept under hedges, they slept in wide open fields, and if they came across the kindly farmer, they burrowed down into the hayricks to have one warm, dry night before reaching Cork City, my city. And when they arrived, even though they were weary, they celebrated until they found out they had 25 miles more to go to get to Cove, in the then known world, it was the deepest harbour. Now we are second deepest to Sydney. It's well we can imagine what the mothers said to their children as they threw their shawls around their thin shoulders. Never forget where you came from. Tell our stories, keep our traditions, and for God's sake, will you say your prayers so that you might arrive safe across the ocean? And send us letters. They may take months or years to reach us, but we'll be waiting. And we'll call the neighbours in and we'll tell them how you're getting on in America. Something in Mr. O'Brien's stomach tightened. Something around his heart broke, and he couldn't stand and watch this scene. He turned then and he walked up the bluffs of Cove, watching the sea now from a great distance. And in Antiang Driachta, he began to call out his anguish. Chang and Driachta, the magical language of Irish. Anamara, soul of the sea, Sbria don spare, spirit of the sky, Goch Nuguiha, voice of the wind, Clushum, listen to me, Maroic shiad me, they murder me, Ta Okrisarum, Okrisim Volok, Okrisim Cree, Okrisim Kyaun, Okrisim Anum. I have a terrible hunger upon me, in my stomach, in my heart, in my mind, in my soul. Kauriokling, help us. It was as if the elements heard, because as he fell to his knees, the sky began to darken, and the waves began to roll, and the wind began to rise, not to drown out his words, you understand, but to collect them, to fashion them into a tune that would follow the beating hearts of his children across the ocean. He watched as their little stick figures walked up onto what seemed like a toy boat now. They were going to sleep in bunks with feet on either side of their young faces as they were squashed in cheek by jowl. They faced one another. They faced oncomers. They faced pestilence and inclement weather. But through it all, deep in the belly of the wind, they heard that ancient tune from the old country. La, 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 la. La, 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 la. And it was just enough. It was just enough to rise their hearts. It was just enough to keep their spirits up until they came into New York Harbour with that great symbol of hope holding up her lamp. They disgorged from the ship. They got work and their faces began to fill out, and their Irish eyes, they smiled once more, and they brought our stories and our songs and our traditions to new ground. The breeze took her leave of the children of Era, and she made her way to the top of the aspen tree, where she sang that ancient tune, One Last Time. Ta acrisarum, acrisandawin, kauriak ling. Down at the base of the aspen tree, Grandfather Choctaw poked the red embers of the fire, and as he listened, he thought, what a strange tune. What a beautiful tune. I wonder, what does it mean? What does the wind sing to me? In a culture like our own, that knows what it is to listen to dreams, he went into the longhouse and he covered himself with the blankets of his people. He descended then to that place that needs no language, the misty place of dreams. Two braves stepped forward, and between them an emaciated figure, cheeks hollowed out, eyes rolling back in his head, teeth rattling in his mouth. And in that place that needs no language, he let it be known. The Irish are starving, starving in their stomach, in their heart, in their mind, in their soul. But more than this, they are starved of hope. Because as the world watches, as the world listens, nobody seems to see, nobody seems to hear. Will you help us? He faded back into the mist of sleep as Grandfather Choctaw came up through the layers and called his people around to tell them his dream vision. They looked at him then, full of hurt. They said, Grandfather, we are 11 years off of the trail of tears. Our backs are bent. Our hearts are broken. What do you expect us to do? And he reminded them that they were a people who had elegance of spirit. They knew that the history book of the world was a very big volume, and they but one page in that history book. Blink and you would miss it. This is our chance to help, he said. Grandfather, that man on the horse, he kicked Grandma on the shoulder, for she was not moving fast enough. And that man down there with the big stick, he frightened our children into silence. Are these the people you want us to help? He took a deep breath then, right into the soles of his feet. And when he opened his eyes, he went to each one of them, looking into their souls through the window to the souls. And he said to them, are you telling me? Are you telling me that we need to treat these people the same way that we were treated? Are we not then the same? Are you telling me that we do not treat these people any differently than the way we were treated? How then can we call ourselves different? The people heard the weight of truth in his story. They took jobs with the railways of America. They collected the foreign coin in a little receptacle for 3 months, not spending 1 cent. And at the end of 3 months, they said, we will not send money to Ireland. It will go into the pocket of Lord Trevelyan. How wise they were. Instead, these people need a symbol, a golden symbol. So they hired a ship and they felt it with golden seed from the hull to the decks, and they sent it across the Atlantic Ocean to come into Cove, not 25 miles from where I sit now. From there, it went to the Weybridge in Mallow, from Mallow to every county in Ireland, north and south, and it still flies in our fields to this day. And we never forgot. We call them Clan Ceanna, the same family. Clan Ceanna, kindred spirits. And to this day, our bond grows, for we are more the same than we are different. A little candle in the wind of history. Shinne Mushkale, I hope it landed.
Gorov Mila Mahagut. Maria.
Fáilte Macara, fáilte.
Beautiful story, and I'm sure that story and all the stories we're hearing this morning are landing, which we'll get to talk about later, and some beautiful themes running through. So thank you for that. Violetta and Marina, we'll start with Violetta in relation to, I suppose, Eastern European stories and the calendar stories that you may have. Violetta, would you like to share with us?
Well, it's so inspiring, and it's so good to hear that what sort of leads me into believe that in ancient times people were globally much more connected than we are today, in spite of all the technology. And let me just maybe justify this sentence, because listening to all other speakers, I can see so many similarities with what I know about my ancestors. Because the natural calendar before Christianity, which means before the 8th century, that my ancestors followed was lunar rhythm, guided by both moon and the sun. And these calendars weren't just about tracking time. I would, if I use a more modern language, I would say that they were about maintaining coherence between human life and the wider systems like nature, cosmos, communities. Today I would call them coherence holders with nature itself. And maybe that I don't take too much time, but I will provide some of the examples which for me are very inspiring, and I hope one day I can learn how to live by them. Time at that time was qualitative, not numeric, which some of the colleagues already mentioned. So each period had a very particular meaning. It wasn't a number. So, for example, time of awakening, which was spring, time of fullness, which was summer, time of decline, which was autumn, and time of rest, which was winter. And that was reflected even in our language, in the way how words were constructed and then, of course, used. They reflected these natural cycles. For example, in my language, even today, the word for fall is yasin, which has a multiple meanings depending how you stress that particular word. If with one type of stress on the first syllabus is the name of the tree that first drops the leaves and tells the farmers that the fall is coming. Then if you decompose the word yasin, it actually consists of two words, yeah, which means is, and sen, which means dreaming, which is telling people it's time to get ready for dreaming. As I explained before, that was time of rest, winter. And if you read backwards, the same word, yasin, means nese, which means do not see it anymore, because we are entering the period of winter, which nothing will grow. So that's how closely connected the whole existence of the ancient was. And of course, we use the natural cycles as well, like solstice and equinox and planting and harvest times. And these were very much under the influence of moon cycles, which help people to orient themselves when is the best time for growing a particular crop. But what I found inspiring, and I believe that's not just for Slovenia, it's a Slavic thing, is that we actually had 4 major sort of what you call solar events as well, which is called winter solstice, was rebirth of the sun. Spring equinox was the time to seek balance, start of growth. Summer solstice was the peak of life energy. So everything was booming. That's the time when it was explosion of energy and activities and actions. And then autumn equinox was the time for harvest and descent, to get closer to your soul again and get ready for the connection with the soul world, which was November 1st, which we call the Day of the Dead Souls, which, we come the closest to our ancestors. So even today, I mean, luckily, some of the rituals have been preserved. So we do celebrate still Midsummer Night, with lots of bonfires. May 1st, which was Valentine's Day, really, even workers took as a workers' day, but it was always associated with bonfires as well. So we do, all over Slovenia, you will see bonfires being burned. I don't know, March 12th is the day, that's the period when the bird starts mating. And that in the old days was the day of lovers until this, whatever, the Western tradition came in with other dates. But it was everything was related to really to natural cycles, the way how the whole earth is behaving. And I mean, if we are honest, when we open our inner self, that's where our spirituality meets the reality of the planet Earth. And it was so lovely, well expressed in our mythology, where especially connecting the like 2 seasons, like spring and summer, we have this, we never had the top god for the whole year. Yeah, it was depending on the characteristics that you needed in that particular period. For example, Perun, which was dominating sky, thunder, and order. That was sort of god was used in spring and summer. But in autumn and winter, you needed something else. You needed water, movement, earth, chaos in a way. That was Veles, which was another type of god. And we have also the goddess of spring, Vesna. And so it was, the mythology was so closely related, it made sense. People did not just make up things in the past. Everything that they used, everything that they lived with made sense, helped them to be in the natural cycle. So I don't want to take too much of your time, and I'm sure Marina will add something, but at that time was seen as cycles, like others already mentioned today, not like a linear flow. Yeah, and humans were deeply, deeply embedded in nature, not separated like we are today. So I hope that these inspirations we can, in the concept of ancient future wisdom, we can bring forward again and feel more in balance, more harmonized with life that we live. Maybe I'll stop there, but such an inspiring conversation today. So I had to recall all these elements that I remember as a kid I was part of. And so, yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Violetta. Thank you so much. It's even you're mentioning there, when we're in balance, it's kind of that sense of being in flow. And when certainly, when you sense of flow, there is no sense of time.
Exactly.
There's no sense of time.
I mean, physically, what is time? Time is artificial component. I love the formula S equals V times T, and take time away, and the travel is velocity. So there is no time. Sorry.
Well, that's so beautiful. Marina, would you like to join in here in relation to maybe adding here to Violetta's stories?
Yes, and I was so glad to hear that the names of the pagan gods are the same for Slovenia and for the Eastern European countries. So I would speak, I'm originally from Russia, and I would speak from this territory. And by the way, it's really important to remember that, so in our tradition, pagan feasts and holidays and sacred rituals, they were not wiped, but they were somehow embraced by early Christianity, which came in the 10th century from the Byzantium. And by the way, the Duke, the Knyaz, the Saint Vladimir, who baptized the ancient Rus, he was located in Kiev, which is now Ukraine. So our tradition and our history of pagan times and of Christianity, it came from Kiev. And then it was spread across the ancient Rus, which then was sort of divided on Russia and Ukraine. But we have the same traditions, the same ancestry. And it's really interesting that, for example, the names of our months, by the way, the very name of month, месяц, is the same with the moon. So it's the same meaning and the same word, which signs the moon, the celestial body, and the time of this period. And what is interesting that with this Byzantium Orthodox Christianity, in Russian language, so it was across several centuries, but the names of the months now are the same with the Latin words. So we have January, which is Yanvar, for example, Mart, which is May, March, May, which is May. So very, very similar, and each month is very, very similar in the pronunciation with the Latin names. And at the same time, for example, in Ukrainian language, they left their initial names, which names of the months, which from the pagan period, which each of the months had the meaning of the weather. So what the weather was. Also, for example, studying for the winter months, listopad for October. So when their leaves are falling. So in the ancient tradition and in other Slavic languages, I know that this initial meaning of the months left as it was, and did not change with the Christianity and with bringing this Latin and then Byzantium tradition. And again, speaking about the traditions, it's very interesting how they incorporated into their Christianity and Orthodox culture. Because, for example, not long ago, we celebrated Maslenitsa, which is the Shrove, not day, but the week. The whole week before the Great Lent. It was about a butter week. During whole this period of time, it's a festive time when people are baking crepes, and the crepe is the symbol of sun. So it was the celebration of coming of spring, and initially it was sort of the start of the springtime, and it was sort of coming to the equinox and everything which is connected with this coming of warmth to the land and bringing the sun, which starts warming the land and the starting of some awakening of nature. But as I mentioned, now it's the eve of the Orthodox Lent, Great Lent. So it's a fest of the duration of the week when people are celebrating, they are eating, they are dancing, they are having very interesting traditions before the Great Lent, when everybody rejects all their material enjoyments and start fasting until their Easter. Also, speaking about the Святки or Kaleda, which is their time connected, at the end of the year. And it's a sacred liminal period when 1 year comes away and the new year comes. It's very similar to the Yule period, which is connected of this with this time of darkness and of being more concentrated on the spiritual and sort of, I would say, maybe mindful state. And at the same time, after that, we have the Kalyatki, which is sort of the winter festive time when children are going and singing songs and collecting, something like Halloween, but it is before the Christmas in Russian tradition, when children are coming and collecting some singing stories and singing carols and telling stories and collecting some tasty things. And again, speaking about summer solstice, we have Ivan Kupala, which is the tradition of bonfire, but it is not in March, it is not in May, it's in the middle of, so it's about 24th of June. And it's about the cleaning and connecting with their spirits of forests and fields. And it's about jumping over the fire and having dances together in the sacred circle. So also it's about connecting with this summer solstice energies. And I would like to maybe finalize with the story, which was not initially Russian, but I think that it's from Slovakia or Czech country, but it is very, in different narratives, it's really the same for the Eastern European countries. Is the story about 12 months and this sacredness of the seasonal order is reflected in this story in a very interesting way, because the idea is that there was a capricious, naughty, and rather wicked young princess who sent her girl servant for to collect the snowdrops in the midst of the severe winter. And this girl cried and went to the forest because she could not refuse to do so, and she understood that she will freeze to death in this severe winter. And so she went to the forest, and she went through this forest through all the night. And suddenly, in the deep forest, she saw a great bonfire. And she saw 12 brothers who were sitting around this fire, and these were the brothers' months. And so this story is about the sacred order, which should not be distorted. So each month has its own time. But the girl was so frightened, and she was so kind, and she was so polite with them, that brothers agreed to change for a very small period of time the order. And the April came, and she could collect snowdrops. And so they gave them this opportunity to, and again, it was in this liminal period of time between in Yule period, if we could say, in this Svyatki period. So it was a magic period, and that's why she managed to sort of find these brothers, and they helped her. But afterwards, when these wicked people sent the troops in order to make these months do what this naughty princess wanted. So they just were swept away by the blizzard, and they could not do anything. And in different variations of the story, they just froze to death because they were not kind-hearted. They were sort of oppressive, and they wanted to dictate their will to these 12 months. So it's about this connection and understanding that each period of time, each brother month has their own realm and their own time when they come into power and they bring some gifts to people. And you cannot just destroy this this sacred order. And if you want to be aligned, and if you want to know how to navigate throughout of the year, you should respect the sacred order, and you should follow the sort of the prescriptions of each brother month. So that's a very interesting story, and I think that in the connection to our idea of the soul of the place and the connection of the soul of the places and cities and bioregions where we live, and we started discussing yesterday this ecosystemic approach, it's so important to respect nature, to respect ancient traditions, not just their following the rituals, the meaning of which we don't understand. It's mostly about the honoring our roots and the honoring our heritage in order to understand how to navigate respectfully in today, and how to bring the better tomorrow without distortion, without destroying this knowledge, without destroying relationships with nature, and understanding how we could bring this bridge between yesterday and tomorrow. So thank you.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you so much for that. And we now have Omar, who's going to join us. Omar is a storyteller, and thank you, Maria, for introducing Omar to this beautiful circle. So Omar is a storyteller from Marrakesh, and his work reflects a deep respect for heritage, a natural gift for connection, which we've been hearing a lot about today, and a belief in storytelling as a living, shared experience that can inspire, unite, and spark imagination in the next generation. So Omar, are you there? Are you with us?
Hello.
Hello, Omar. Lovely to see you.
Yes, lovely.
And a beautiful blue sky behind you.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, lovely. Lovely, yeah. Great.
Yeah.
So yes, so we'd love to hear from you, Omar, and you know, what stories you'd like to share with us this morning. And I know you've been with us all morning.
Yes, hello everybody. Thank you so much everybody for being here, and thank you for inviting me to this beautiful meeting with you. And yes, it's been a beautiful to hearing you, and to listen to the stories and experiences and information about the calendar in different cultures, in different places all around the globe. You know, it's let me just tell you something about Morocco. And in our culture, we have three main calendars that we are like we have in our culture. The first one is like the that we are in the. It's more official. It's all the three of them are official, but different categories. First one is like the that we have is with the normal one that everybody has in the world, like you can know that January, February, March, April, and all these things, you know. And the second one has with the spiritual thing, like in Islam we have this calendar where the prophet traveled from Mecca to Medina. So this is like we have this kind of, we celebrate that day of Hijrah, like the traveling. and moving from one place to another place. And we have the third one that I love personally because I am Amazigh. I have Amazigh culture in my blood, and I am Amazigh. So it's like and the more ancient one. It's Amazigh calendar. So we have like 27, 29 and 2976 years, like very ancient one in Morocco. So it's Amazigh, and it starts in the 12 officially in Morocco, because we have some differences between like Amazigh of Morocco and Amazigh in Libya and Amazigh in Algeria, for example, and different places. So it's different. In Morocco is official now, it's 12 January. It's the start of that, like we call it first Eid Nair. And Eid Nair in Tamazight means like the night of the 1st of January. And it has something with the agriculture. So when, for example, in Morocco, when you tell somebody about the calendars, so you need to specify which calendar you're talking about. It has 3 calendars. It depends. For example, in Ramadan, Mr. Like Jim Brole had already said something beautiful about this, that it depends on the loon. Like the loon is like we see the loon, and we see this. It starts today. If we don't see it, we'll wait till the day after till we see it. It's not like something that we know, like we have in the like you have in the normal one. For example, you see this is like the start today, and we have like 20, 29 or 30 or 31 in the month. In like this one of spiritual one that we have, Hijri, that we call it in Morocco, in Islam, it starts depends on we see the moon. So this is like a very beautiful thing to know. And also I heard about the Chinese one, and I heard about different things about this calendars. So the calendar has like the story and the history behind. It's not something that just came, as I said, and we are in blessing days here in Morocco, because we just have Ramadan, like 29 days, and yesterday it was like we have 2 days ago we have the Eid Mubarak. So every day, like the first one of the like the new year of Hijri, we have it remind us of this history, and it remind us of like this great travel that the Prophet did from one place to another place. And this is very spiritual, and it's very like it's very deep in a lot of aspects in life.
Thank you, Omar.
Omar also has some lovely stories, Valerie.
Yeah, it would be lovely, Omar, if you had a story that you'd like to share with us, even just for a few minutes. That would be gorgeous.
Yes, of course, and that would be great to share a story with you. It's like it's a beautiful day and beautiful people, and it's time for a story.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, and okay, so a story like a very few minutes. So I'm okay. Yeah, let's tell you a 3 to 5 minute story. Is that correct?
That's perfect. That's lovely. That's lovely, Omar. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. And maybe the story, it's Maria had already know that story, and I would love to tell it, because I love that story a lot, because it reminds me of beautiful days in Ireland, in Listoil Storytelling Festival last September. So that's why I would love to share that story too.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah. Okay, so once upon a long time ago, in a beautiful place, in a certain place in the world. And this place is a very, very small village. So this village known as like in different cultures, like very connected people, and everybody knows each other and everybody help each other. And this place had like a grandma, we call it a grandma, and like surrounded by people and children specifically, and tell them a lot of stories about a lot of things. And one day there is a girl like called Aneko, and this Aneko like is very, very like smart and sit down and listen to the stories. And this grandma all the time tell them different stories, different places in the world. And this grandma like one day told them a story about a place. And this place, it's like a little bit far away from that village, and there is a thick forest in front of them. So if you want to cross that thick forest, go to that village, it would be very like a little bit dangerous, and you may have some courage. You know, days in, days out, a lot of things happened, and one day there is like a very bad thing happening in that small village. Like all the people in that village got sick. So except Aniko, and Aniko was like facing that a lot of things and see to herself like everybody got sick, and her siblings, her friends, her mother, her father, her grandmother, grandfather, and she has one thing to do. And she went to that grandma and said to her, you already had tell us about something called like this place, and there is a thick forest in front of us, there's a lot of monsters, but everybody got sick right here. What am I supposed to do? And she said to her, you got a horse? And she said, yes, I have indeed. And she said to her, you need to have the courage and the brave to save your skin. She rode her horse and she went through that thick forest. It was 3 days and 3 nights without eating or drinking anything. It was alone, it was dark. And then one day she got a little bit closer to that village, and she heard voices of kids laughing. And then she was very happy because she finally got to that place. But once she reached that place, she discovered something very like unusual. They are people, right? And they are speaking a language. They don't speak that language, but they are people. But they have all long necks. And she looked at them and said, wow, all these people have long necks, and the children, everybody here. She looked to herself and she like measured her neck, and she said to herself, I do not have a long neck, and those people, if they see me, they would recognize, and they would see, and they would see that I am not belong to that place. But she has the brave, and she would keep going. And they went, and the people gathered, and they see her, and they say, okay, you came from that place, and she said, but they don't speak the language, and try to explain where she came from and all these things. And there is a beautiful thing about Aneko, is that she has a beautiful voice. She knew how to sing songs, and this is like a gift from God. So she sit down, and every morning she woke up, she opened her eyes, and she saw the beautiful like nature, and she would just sing. And the people, by day in, day out, a lot of people there like hear about her songs and beautiful voice, and they got excited, and they got like they got have this like the routine to wake up about when she would sing songs, like, and everybody would sing, and everybody were happy about her beautiful voice. One day she's vanished from the world. She's vanished from this place. Nobody know where she was. And there is a beautiful like an honest woman came to that a big man, and the very like in in ancient places, in ancient like culture, we have like a man, like very wise or woman, a man or woman, that everybody in the place in the village would respect her opinion and you would listen to them. So she went to that man and she said to him, you know, Aneko is not anymore here, and I heard last night a man came to her and she said, you are not belong to this place because we are different. And she said, no, but I lived here for a long time and I am a human being. And he said to her, no, look at your face, you look at your neck, you don't have a long neck as all we have here. You do not belong to this place, so go back where you came from. She was young, she was like sensitive, she ride her horse and she went back to the thick forest, because it's impossible to come back to her place in the village, because if you got there she would be sick and nobody would there, because like that sick, it was very like a very hard one. She went into the thick forest and she sat there for 3 days and 3 nights. The people in the village and the big man and that man, the wise man, gathered all the people, and he said to them, you know Aneko? And she said, yes, we know her. Do you love her? And everybody said yes. And that a man said, no, but okay, you like her? Okay, so she's not here anymore. And do you know where she came from? Where she went, or where she is? And no one knew. And the wise man said, we need to bring her back. And guess what they did for her to bring her back? Because we don't have a telephone, we don't have like a smartphone, we don't have nothing. They gathered all of them and they would sing back to her the same thing that she would do for them. Now it's time to do the same thing for her, to bring her back. And everybody would sing, Aneko ne sawane, Aneko ne sawane, Aneko ne sawane.
I think Omar is
And while he's
singing.
pausing, he taught it to us in English also. An
And
echo, come back to us. An echo, come back to us.
thank you so much, Maria.
A beautiful handoff of a story from one tradition to another, which is beautiful.
Yes, so Aneko heard about the songs and she was very happy and excited, and she ran and she ride her horse and ride back, and she would back, and everybody would see her and they would smile, and they smiled and they welcomed her in the place and they said, yes, you belong to here, you know. And they welcomed her there, and she lived there for a long time, and they accept her as she is. And the first time I heard about this story and I read it in a beautiful book, and I really enjoyed that story, because in a certain like there is something happened in like I still remember like a few months now, and when I heard that story, I love it, and I shared with some like group of people, and it was like an answer to them, you know, because a lot of people, and in different like in this world, like we have a lot of differences, like a lot of languages, a lot of culture, a lot of backgrounds, references, and so it's time to tolerance, it's time to tolerate, it's time to accept people as they are and live in a beautiful place, because this world it deserves to live in peace, and that's why I love that story, and I really admire that story. And it was and this is a story that has an African background, this is an African story, and I read it, and the storyteller that tell that story first, it was in Senegal, in one of the small villages in Senegal, and a lot of friends from Senegal, and I tell them that story, and they say yes, it is a wonderful story, even though, you know, some of some of the Senegals, they don't know that song Aniko Nisawani, and you know that some but they say, okay, this is a specific dialect from a specific village. So I say, okay, it's not Wolof, by the way. This is not Wolof. This is a very like a little bit different. So this is like the magic of the languages, the magic of the dialects. So I'm very happy to be here with you today, and thank you so much, Valerie. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Marina. Большое спасибо. And because I love the Russian language, and I have a very small story, if I have time, with the Russian story, the Russian language. In yes, 9 years now, 9 years in 2018, I had the chance to it's not that I have an opportunity to have like an experience in Russia. It's not it's I didn't went to Russia, by the way, but I have the chance to continue my studies in Russia. So I have 3 months of learning Russian. So I learned some of Russian like language. I have a lot of friends from Russia. So I really enjoyed. By the way, I forgot a lot of things about the Russian language. By the way, but some of the sentences and the language still in my head. So all I recall is большое спасибо and здравствуйте, как дела, and some of the.
Omar, thank you
I hope that we will continue practicing, Omar.
Yes, of course.
Absolutely. Now I can't believe we're already an hour and a half into the stories, and we've heard some beautiful, the stories, but it would be lovely for us maybe to even just kind of coming on from what you said there, Omar, in relation to, yes, there's a lot of differences, there's a lot of different cultures, but actually there's so much similarity. There's so much similarity. But so maybe we've just opened up, for conversation in relation to, the similarities, or what kind of is landing for us.
I just suggest that maybe people use their putting the hand up so that they can come in, because I'd say we're all love this subject so much.
Ready to go. So I'll just start, even just myself, and then maybe hands up, as Maria said. There was a theme that very much came through to me, and it was one of, traveling and movement from one place to other, right? Whether it's in nature, whether it's, even the stories of people going from this place to that place and their experience. So a real theme of time and travel and flow and movement and change and difference. So that's a very strong theme that came through to me. So who would like to put, maybe share their thoughts? Maria, would you like to go?
Yes, I was very struck with the line of time and how time became linear. And in most of our cultures, in every single one that we've heard from today, they talked about the spiral, And in mathematics and science, they also talk about the spiral of time. And then we look back to the old symbols. So I can speak from the Irish one. So we would have the spirals, and we would have the triskells, denoting time and showing the stars. And we organized our stones in compatibility to the stars to light up on one day in the year, for example, Newgrange, or and I'm sure, and this resonates. So I remember listening to, like, from Slovenia, from Russia, from Africa, from Jim and the China and stuff like that. This idea of, as you say, Valerie, the flow.
Yeah, the flow, it's kind of interesting in relation to, bringing it back to kind of the everyday today and the pace that we're moving at. It seems to like that we're trying to push the boundaries of time and trying to fit as much as possible into a finite time, where actually what I find is that when I'm really engaged and I'm really in flow, there's plenty of time. there always seems to be more than enough time if I'm really in that period of flow. So I find that really, really interesting. Who'd like to come in here in relation?
I was thinking that listening to the stories, and I had the privilege of meeting an old Maori guy called Hirangi Waikiri Puru, who was a Maori cosmologist, and he was the man that really revitalized Maori language. He was a colorful character, wore a big cape and a Peruvian hat, and he's just wonderful, twinkle in his eye. But it made me think that, because he told lots of stories, and I always thought that the cosmology was so advanced for these old Maori stories, the understanding of the cosmos and the stars and the movement and whatnot. It sort of preceded sort of some of the Western ideas. And the other thing about time also sort of hinted at quantum physics concepts, like there's only time when there are other people present with you. So it's an observation. If there's no one there, there is no time, because there's no observer. So these little hints, and they're wrapped up in stories and offering great insights to not just how we grow food and when we grow food and the seasons and whatnot, but something much deeper. And maybe that's just the depth of connection and the intimacy that they develop, because develop that intimacy when they come from tropical areas into the subtropical place where completely different species of flora and fauna, they had to really apply science to understand. And to maintain that understanding, that's where the stories came in, because the stories, just like Aboriginal stories, they set in place something more permanent in our minds than pure scientific fact that can easily get lost, because it's not so woven. So story weaving is so important.
Stories help us to make sense, don't they? Yeah.
But also hold that sense and hold it through generations as well.
Yes. Yeah. Would anybody else like to come in and share their thoughts on, what resonated with you about our lovely storytelling this morning? Okay. Patricia. Hello, Patricia.
Yeah, I'm so glad that I spotted this event on your LinkedIn, Valerie. So thank you so much, Marina. All my best wishes to you. Thank you very much for sharing the Slavic side of this huge story of the world. And I'm as a migrant myself, like what struck me is that in each and every story there is always this bravery of a person, of one person who changed everything, changed the trajectory, isn't it? And it's and you can be very you can live your life for ages, being in one place, but then you can move on, change this trajectory, and and make another story for yourself somewhere else. So that's what struck me here today, and thank you so much for that, because that's beautiful morning of first days of spring, isn't it?
Yes, lovely to see you, Patricia.
Lovely to meet you too.
Great. Jim, I think you were looking to come in there.
Yes, I just also wanted to add that I think the challenge we have now is trying to exert too much mastery, over the world, rather than being in touch with it and living by its rhythms. And what intrigued me about all those different calendars is the different ways in which people found a way to make that connection, to come into sync with the natural rhythms of the world, even though they each had their own focus for that. It leads us all to the same place. So I'm always intrigued by the way that, stories carry both differences and similarities, and how we can learn the value of being different while having underlying similarities. So that's all. That's what I wanted to say.
No, it's gorgeous. It's kind of knowing, isn't there? There's maybe a sense of knowing that when we're out of rhythm with the natural world, that it just doesn't feel, right. So there's that need across all our cultures and across all our stories, is that human need to connect. Yeah.
Yeah, I always felt strongly that we get served up, well, our children get served up so many repeating tropes of Hollywood storylines, good guy, bad guy talks too much at the end. When in nature, when I walk through the forest, there's stories and stories and stories, whether it's from the perspective of a bug on a tree or a leaf, or there's metaphor and so much richness. We're going to break away from this trash that's fed up to our children, that's passively consumed.
Back to the fairy tale, Dave. Back to the old stories would be lovely. Yeah.
Well, new versions of old stories, new mythologies
New
as
versions
well.
of old stories, yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
keep it alive.
Yeah. I'm just very conscious, guys, of our time. And if that's okay with everybody, Maria has been doing some weaving with the
Hey.
stories. So maybe Maria, about, if maybe 10 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
The stories, and then we'll wrap up. But yeah, I think that would be lovely.
Okay, so just to mention that the threading and weaving is part of an awful lot of Indigenous cultures. I just know it from my own culture. My great grandmother would put all her knowledge into stories, because when she was born, it was illegal for her to be educated. Imagine, so I love this little tradition of pulling the threads and weaving a story, and weaving is part of our it's part of all of our cultures, so here's the story. Once upon a time, the world was a really happy place. It was full of lovely animals and birds and snakes and insects, and the people were always smiling, and they often settled by a river. In the beginning of this time, everybody was in the same place. Everybody was related to one another, and everybody knew when everybody else's important days were, like birthdays, like death days, like the day that you reached your majority. But it became full. So some people, they got into boats and they went down the river to a new place. And in the beginning, people visited one another, and they still looked to the stars, and they still looked to the moon and watched the sun as it made its way across the sky. And they still kept the Shan Nos, the old ways. But over time, when they moved again from the river, when they became so separated that they did not know that once they had been related to one another, they went into little boxes. And these little boxes were warm when it was winter outside, was dark when the sun was up in the sky, was totally bright when they should have been in bed asleep, and they lost their connection to their other people, and they lost their connection to the moon, to the sun, to the stars, to their brother animals, to their sister reptiles, and they did not realize anymore that they were the same. And a big gash came in the river, and the river began to flow faster than she had ever flown before, like an artery had been cut, and the water turned red as the mud churned up. And the people who were still living near the river, who could see the moon and the stars, they became afraid and they began to shout, "Oh my God, what's happening? What's happening?" And the people in the little boxes, because life was so insular there, couldn't hear the cries of these people or didn't want to and were taking no notice. And it felt insurmountable. And people began to look at their old ways. They saw that there was 4 times in the year. There was the time of dreaming, the cold months. There was the time of stretching slowly, the warming months. There was the times of celebration and laughter and new life, the summer months. And there was the time of harvest and taking in what you had sown. And then it all began again. And as they looked in their books and they looked to their songs and as they told the old stories and as they recited poetry, they understood that most cultures had these 4 seasons. And these seasons could be read by looking at the moon and the sun as it made its way across the sky. But what were they going to do about this? Because they had become separated from that rhythm. So some people said, why don't we drum next to the river? And some people said, why don't we make a song that will invite people out of their boxes and back to the river? And so, in a beautiful language, they began to sing, "Na se wani, na se wani." And it turned into another language, "Ta kui minish, ta kui minish." And finally it reached the people in the boxes, "Come back to me, come back to me." And we are in the awakening where the song is being sung and we need to spread it to one another, where we sit on the rivers of the world and we notice the blood red mud and we try to soothe the fast flowing waters back to a natural rhythm. Shin e our scale, that is our story, and we have woven it this day.
Wow. Thank you. That is absolutely beautiful. I'm just going to leave us now. I know we're a few minutes early, but I think we've had a beautiful dialogue. But I'm just going to read another poem, For a New Beginning. It's another John O'Donoghue poem, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. In out of the way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you are ready to emerge. For a long time it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the grey promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight when your courage kindled, and out you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. And soon you will be home in a new rhythm. For your soul senses the world that awaits you.
That's so beautiful, Valerie.
I
And
just thought it kind of brought a lot of what we spoke about today together.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to send the appreciation of the collective here to Valerie and to Marina, who do amazing work to bring us all together, you know, and we just so delighted to be part of this. And thank you for creating this space. And to Dave too, who does an awful lot of technical work in the background. And I suppose I have a longing to hear the music of all of the accents, the bouquet of accents that are here. So I was wondering, in your language and in any other language that you know, could you just say goodbye? Would that be a good one?
It'll be lovely.
Yeah. So I would like to say Slán live Muchlan. So goodbye to my lovely story family.
Haere la.
Thank you, Dave. Gurav Mila Mahagav. Thank you a million times over for this beautiful session and for everybody sharing their lovely, lovely stories.
Shalom Aleichem. Peace be upon you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Tim.
Sat Sri Akal.
Beautiful. Спасибо и до новых встреч. Thank you and see you next time.
Yes, see you next time. Have a lovely day. Thank you, everybody. It's beautiful. And with that, we love you and leave you.
Widzenia.
Bye, Patricia. Lovely to see you.
Wonderful. So we have 5 minutes break. So we need to decide whom are we handing over the baton.